It's crazy. We were talking a few months ago, and I don't know if I would have told you last year at the end of the season that on April 30th you still would have called the last regular season Reds game if you would have believed me or had me committed. It's crazy the situation we've been handed here.
There's no question about that. I would have never dreamed it. At my advanced stage, I've never experienced anything like this, and God forbid, I hope nobody else, along with myself, has to deal with this situation again once they get a handle on it.
What do you think going forward? When do you think we'll have a sense of what we can expect from the baseball season this year? Do you think that's coming soon, or is it anybody's guess?
I think right now it's anybody's guess. I mean, I applaud the efforts that Major League Baseball is undergoing to try and come up with a feasible plan, and I think the most recent one, to me, is the most appealing, and that is play in 3 different locations and have 3 divisions that are more geographically oriented than anything to cut down on the amount of travel that a team has to make. The Reds obviously would be in a central division with 3 of the 4 other teams in the division, the Cardinals, the Cubs, and the Milwaukee Brewers. And then you have, I guess, everybody from the American League Central. And then you'd have the Atlanta Braves, which I find kind of strange. I don't know why Pittsburgh would not be in the Central Division. Right. Atlanta would be East, but that's the plan they have, and play roughly 100 games. And that works for me. I think nothing has been said about the postseason. I'm sure they're working diligently on that to come up with a plan as to how many teams would be involved and what format would be played out. And I'm a big fan of that one, and there have been 2 others that were okay, nothing that would get you excited. But the bigger picture, obviously, is they've got to have the right answers to every question that they ask that deals with the health of the individuals involved, not only the directly involving the players and the coaches and the managers and the trainers, but all the people that work in the periphery to make this game possible in a ballpark, even though there are not going to be any fans involved. So, the big picture is to get those questions answered properly. And if they are, and however long it might take, then they go forward from there. But I think they're working on it. And for me, that's a good sign in terms of possibly seeing some baseball in 2020.
It's funny, before all this happened, a lot of people were critical of Major League Baseball for not stripping the Houston Astros of their title, saying the sanctity of the game has to be protected. And now some of those same people are saying 5-inning games underwater, yeah, fine, whatever. I just need baseball. Is there a level of sanctity that has to be preserved with baseball, or would this be a time, if they do come back, to experiment with some things? Where do you stand on that?
No, I see the experimentation aspect of it good. It all depends upon which experiments you're talking about. One of the most recent ones that I find very intriguing is tie ball games. And at the end of 9 innings, that's it. And then you'd have to institute a point system whereby teams would get 2 points for a win, 1 point for a tie. You have ties in soccer. You have ties in football. And not only would I be in favor of that in this unique, hopefully never seen again type of season, but it would be something that they would permanently put into place. That way you eliminate extra innings, you eliminate the numbers that don't lie, and that is, as long as the longer a game goes, the TV ratings go down. And you always stand the chance of fatigue for players that leads to bigger injuries down the road. I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with some of the other ones that they're talking about. But yeah, again, going back to your original statement, you got to understand, baseball people talk out of both sides of their mouth, especially the commissioner, I think, that we have currently in place. I was very disappointed in the constraints that were placed on the Boston Red Sox. I think that they needed to be much more stern than they were. But then again, the whole Houston thing was screwed up from the get-go. So, it's not hard to understand why Boston would not be, to a lesser extent, the same way. But as far as experimentation in 2020, if we operate under the assumption that they can play baseball, I'm good for that. I don't have a problem with that at all.
Would 100 games be the minimum for you in terms
Yeah.
of? Okay.
100 would be the benchmark for me. In terms of allowing the season to have credibility. I think 100 games. Now, I know people have said, well, you can make do with 81 or half of the 162. I think that 100 games would be fine. And if they can get all these questions that we discussed a moment ago ironed out to their satisfaction, if they were to get started by late June or early July, they can get those games in with no problem. I don't see any problem at all with that. What's going to really be interesting, though, Jed, let's operate under the assumption that everything works. They get the format in place. Everybody's happy with that. Then they get the most important things, and that's the health questions all answered to the satisfaction of everybody involved. Repeated testing, the whole 9 yards. And now it comes down to a sit-down face-to-face between ownership and the union. And are the players going to ask for more money? And if they do, will the owners be willing to give it to them? Would the owners say, we want you to take less money? And the player union says, no way. If you have that kind of impasse, it will be so damaging to the game of Major League Baseball now and forevermore down the road. And I just throw that out there because I think if it came to that, there is no way one side or the other is going to come up with some reason not to go forward and play games in 2020. You talk about a public relations disaster. That would be if the owners were not happy with something that the union wanted and they said, well, then let's take everything off the table. We're not going to play. Or the union, the players wanted more money, or they were offered less money. And they said, nope, we're not taking that. It's off the table. Everything would have been done for nothing. So if it comes to that, I don't know that you're going to have a problem with the two sides coming to an agreement to play baseball in 2020.
Well, gosh, I can't imagine. I never even thought about that, but that would be, as you mentioned, just a complete nightmare for the sport, especially if baseball's the first thing that could potentially come back and everyone's sitting on the sidelines because it's about money. That would be brutal.
No, they've got, whatever their problems are, they would have to have them ironed out. And I really believe that saner heads would prevail and both sides would realize the irreparable damage that they would do on the game itself, on the industry, if everything was in place. And then because of some snag in negotiations, one or both sides said, okay, throw up our hands. We're not going to play baseball. I cannot imagine that would happen.
So I do have to ask what you're doing to stay busy. I know you and your wife like to travel, but obviously that's probably can't happen to the extent that you would like to. We were supposed to have your Reds Hall of Fame induction. That was supposed to have already come to pass. So what are you doing to kind of pass the time as one day just kind of turns into the next?
Jed, I'm doing what you're doing, pal. I just sit around. I have a routine that the sameness of it would drive a lesser sane person crazy. Day in and day out, rarely anything ever changes. Quite honestly, thank God for Netflix and Prime Video and Hulu because I wear those out. And I just feel like, you have to do what you got to do. There's no sense in being impatient about it. I've tried to remind myself, and I do every year about everything, if I have no control over something, there's no sense in me getting upset about it because my getting upset's not going to change a blasted thing. But, I've been extremely patient as Amanda has. We've gotten some things done around the house that we had put off. And now for want of something better to do, we do it. I get on the treadmill twice a day to try and stay in some semblance of shape. But that's pretty much the extent of it. I think I echo the sentiments of a lot of people.
Do you watch baseball? Does it make it easier to watch baseball or does it make it harder? Game.
People talked about when we went to spring training for about 3 weeks, and we'd go to the games, and I'd have people come up to me and say, "Boy, I bet you wish you were up there in that radio booth." And I'd say to them, on the contrary, I really don't. And I said, and the one thing I can do that I've never been able to do. And they said, what's that? And I said, get up and leave anytime I want to. I didn't miss it in spring training, and I figured that would be the first test because, you know, the Reds broadcast every spring training game that they play. But I did not miss broadcasting the games one bit. And having said that, I don't think that if they play baseball in 2020, or even if they don't get back to the game until next year, I don't think I'm going to miss it at all. I've watched some on TV. I watched the '75 World Series, watching the 1990 World Series, watched Tom Browning's perfect game the other night. You know, things like that. But in terms of wishing or doubting the decision I made in January a year ago, I've never doubted that my time had come and it was time for me to walk away.
All right, last question. I got to ask you about the jukeboxes. I know you got one for your birthday, and then I noticed on Instagram you got another one. Are you a jukebox guy now?
You know what? It's the greatest thing in the world. Not only do we have two, but we have them in our living room. I don't know of another living, breathing soul that has one, much less two. When Amanda gave me the retirement gift in September, it was the greatest gift that anybody's ever given me, because I can go back to a kid growing up in Virginia, and I can recollect vividly the first time I ever saw a jukebox. And I know the seed was planted then that one day I would have one. And all the years had gone by and it never happened, and I'd pretty much given up on it. And we got the one. We developed a relationship with a firm outside of St. Louis in Illinois that had the sole rights to the Crosley jukeboxes that are manufactured in Leeds, England. And they're all handmade. If you were to order one today, it would take you 90 days to get one. And they tell you that it would conservatively last you 50 years. They're so well made. So we got one that held 45s, and then we liked it so much, and I thought, you know what, it'd be pretty cool to get the one that holds CDs. And the same company, Deer Park Distributors in Illinois, we've become real good friends with the guy that owns the place, and we got one that was used for promotional purposes. They had 3 or 4 every year that they sold at drastically reduced prices, and we got one that held CDs, and it's the best. Honest to God, we listen to music every night. My stuff, because of my age, is 45s that go back into the 50s and the 60s and the early 70s, and the CDs have every conceivable type of music on it, from country music to Broadway to Sinatra to you name it, we got it. So I'm thrilled to death. I didn't think twice about getting a second one. And they're really pieces of furniture that are beautiful. I mean, they're well made. It's been a kick. That's the one thing that's really made this whole thing a little less tiresome and tedious than it might have otherwise been, is to have these 2 jukeboxes.
So if I came over, what would be the letter and the number that's kind of worn away? What's your go-to, like A5 or B7? What's the song?
I don't think I have any one that's in particular, but I'm a real big fan of rock and roll. They call it the golden age of rock and roll, when it started back in the mid-50s, and the era that's known as the doo-wop music. I've got a lot of that on there. But I'm a big Sinatra fan. I have always been, and I've got plenty of CDs on Sinatra on the CD machine. And the 45s, I had to shop around, and God bless Amanda, when she got this whole thing put together, she'd go on the road with me the last 2 months of the season. I'd go to the ballpark, and she'd seek out these record stores that sold 45s and things like that. But I've acquired quite a collection of 45s, and periodically we'll change them. We know how to change the music, and we've got the tags that identify the song and the artist, and it's really been a real kick. And I highly recommend it to anybody.
Well, hopefully 2020 still has a chance to borrow from old Blue Eyes to be a very good year for Major League Baseball. Thanks so much, Marty.
All right, Jed, good being with you, pal. Thanks very much.